The message arrived on Earth at exactly midnight, as it had for the last 4,000 years. The Galactic Combat Commission sent the same invitation to every spacefaring species in the known universe. The arena games were coming, and every world was expected to send their greatest warrior. Commander Veteran sat in his observation chamber on the Commission's home station, reviewing the list of entries with all four of his compound eyes. He had seen many strange things in his 200 years of service. He had watched the Korthan Berserkers tear through opponents with their bare hands. He had witnessed the telepathic blade dancers of Yul Prime defeat enemies without ever being touched. He had studied the crystalline Shivari as they regenerated from wounds that would kill any other species. But the human entry made him pause. "They are sending a historian?" his adjutant asked, clicking his mandibles in confusion. Veteran checked the file again. Dr. Marcus Chun, age 52, professor of ancient military history at the University of Tokyo. No military service. No combat training on record. No genetic enhancements. No cybernetic implants. "Perhaps it is a joke," the adjutant suggested. "Humans do not joke about the arena," Veteran replied. "They have refused to participate for the last 3 centuries. Something has changed." On Earth, Marcus Chun stood in his small apartment and looked at the acceptance letter one more time. His colleagues had called him crazy. His family had begged him not to go. The military had offered to send one of their drone operators or cyber warfare specialists instead. But Marcus had refused them all. He walked to the wooden chest that sat in the corner of his room. It had belonged to his father and his father's father, and every Chun man going back 12 generations. The wood was old and worn, but the lock still worked perfectly. Marcus opened it with a key he wore around his neck. Inside, wrapped in cloth that had been replaced 100 times over the centuries, lay the sword. Marcus lifted it carefully, feeling its weight in his hands. The katana was 400 years old, forged by a master whose name was now forgotten by everyone except the Chen family. The blade was made of folded steel, hammered and shaped over months of careful work. His ancestors had called it Yurei no Kiba, Ghost Fang. He drew the sword slowly, and the steel sang as it left the wooden sheath. Even after 4 centuries, the edge was perfect. Every generation had maintained it, sharpened it, cared for it like a living thing. "I hope you're ready, old friend," Marcus whispered to the blade. "We have a long journey ahead." The transport ship arrived 3 days later. Marcus boarded with nothing but a small bag of clothes and the wooden chest. The other passengers stared at him as he walked to his cabin. Most of them were aliens heading to the arena to watch the games. They had never seen a human up close before. "Is that really a human?" a young Korthan asked his mother. "Yes," she replied. "Don't stare. They don't like it." Marcus heard them but said nothing. He had grown used to being watched. Humans were rare outside of Earth's solar system. They had the technology to travel stars, but they preferred to stay home. The other species thought they were afraid. They were wrong. The journey to Kethmol Prime took 2 weeks. Marcus spent most of that time in his cabin, practicing. He did not have room to swing the sword, so he practiced his forms empty-handed. He moved through stances that his grandfather had taught him, and his grandfather's grandfather before that. The movements were slow and deliberate. Each one burned into his muscle memory over 30 years of daily practice. Other warriors on the ship trained differently. The Korthan Berserkers lifted weights that would crush a human flat. The Yulalan blade dancers meditated, their minds reaching out to touch the thoughts of everyone around them. The Shivari champions practiced reforming their crystalline bodies, healing wounds in seconds. They all watched the human with amusement. "What is he doing?" a Korthan asked as he passed Marcus's open door. "Some kind of primitive dance," his companion replied. "Humans are strange creatures." Marcus heard them laughing as they walked away. He did not stop his practice. On the last day of the journey, the ship's captain made an announcement. They would arrive at the arena in 6 hours. All competitors were required to register their weapons for inspection. Marcus joined the line outside the registration office. He stood between a Korthan carrying a gravity mace and a Shivari whose arms had been shaped into crystal blades. They towered over him, each one more than 8 feet tall. The registration officer was a small, gray creature with too many eyes. It looked at Marcus with obvious confusion. Species? It asked. Human? Weapon? Marcus placed a wooden chest on the counter and opened it. He lifted out the katana, still in its sheath, and laid it before the officer. The officer scanned it with a device and frowned. This appears to be a simple metal blade. No power source. No enhancement circuits. No poison coating. Correct. The blade is made of carbon steel? Yes. This weapon is 400 years old. Also correct. The officer looked up at Marcus with something like pity in its many eyes. Human, you do understand what you are facing? The champions here carry weapons that can cut through starship armor. They have trained for decades in the finest combat academies in the galaxy. Your opponents will be stronger, faster, and better equipped than you in every way. Marcus took back his sword and placed it in the chest. I understand. And you still wish to compete? I do. The officer made a note on its device. Very well. You are registered. May you die with honor. Marcus smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. I don't plan to die at all. That night, the arena held its opening ceremony. Billions of viewers watched across 1,000 worlds as the champions were introduced one by one. The crowd cheered for their favorites. They roared for the Korthan berserkers. They sang for the Yulin dancers. They chimed in harmony for the Shivari. When Marcus walked onto the arena floor, there was only silence. He was smaller than everyone else. He carried no visible weapon. He wore simple black clothes that looked like something from an ancient Earth museum. Then someone in the crowd laughed. Others joined in. Soon the entire arena was laughing at the tiny human who had come to die. Marcus stood in the center of the floor and waited for the laughter to stop. It took a long time. When it finally did, he bowed once to the crowd, then turned and walked away. In the observation gallery, Commander Vethran watched the human leave. There was something in the way Marcus moved that bothered him. Something in the way he had stood completely still while an entire galaxy laughed at him. What do you think? His adjutant asked. Vethran did not answer for a long moment. I think, he said finally, that we should watch this one very carefully. The arena of Kethmal Prime was the largest structure ever built by any species in the galaxy. It floated in space like a small moon, surrounded by thousands of ships carrying spectators from every corner of the known universe. Inside, the fighting floor could change shape to match any environment. Mountains could rise from nothing. Oceans could appear in seconds. The arena could become a jungle, a desert, or a frozen wasteland. For the exhibition rounds, it remained flat and simple. Just a circle of white stone, 200 meters across, with nowhere to hide. Marcus Chun drew his first opponent on the second day of competition. The match board displayed the names for all to see. Chun, human, versus Gorthik the Crusher. KOR then. The Korthan heavy worlders were one of the most feared species in the galaxy. They came from a planet with 3 times Earth's gravity, which made them incredibly strong and tough. Their exoskeletons could stop bullets. Their muscles could bend steel. Gorthik himself stood 9 feet tall and weighed over 500 kilograms. He carried a gravity mace. The weapon used a small black hole generator to increase its mass at the moment of impact. A single blow could crush a tank. The arena fell silent as the 2 fighters took their positions. Marcus looked tiny standing across from the massive Korthan. He had removed his sword from its sheath and held it in both hands, the blade pointing downward. "Human," Gorthik rumbled. "I will try to make your death quick." Marcus said nothing. The horn sounded. Gorthik charged. The ground shook with each step. He raised his mace high, activating the gravity generator. The weapon's weight increased 1,000-fold. When it came down, it would create a crater in the stone floor. Marcus watched him come. He did not move. He did not raise his sword. He simply stood there, waiting. The crowd held its breath. Gorthik brought the mace down with all his strength. It hit nothing but stone. Marcus was no longer there. He had moved at the last possible moment, stepping to the side with a motion so small that most watchers missed it entirely. At the same time, his sword had left its resting position and drawn a single line through the air. Gorthik's weapon arm fell to the ground. The Korthan stared at the stump where his arm had been. The cut was so clean, so precise, that there was barely any blood. The blade had passed through his exoskeleton like it was not there at all. How? Gorthik asked. His voice was confused, not angry. "How did you cut through my shell? Your weapon has no power source." Marcus flicked the blood from his blade with a single sharp motion. "Your shell is hard," he said quietly, "but it has joints, gaps where the plates meet. My ancestors learned to find those gaps a very long time ago." He slid the sword back into its sheath. "You should seek medical attention. You might be able to save the arm if you hurry." Gorthik looked down at his severed limb, then back at the human. Slowly, he bowed his massive head. "I yield." The crowd erupted, not in cheers, but in shocked confusion. The Korthan champion, the favorite to win the exhibition rounds, had been defeated in a single stroke by a human with an ancient sword. In the observation gallery, Commander Vethran leaned forward in his seat. "Replay that," he ordered. "Slow it down." His technicians obeyed. They showed the moment of the cut frame by frame. Even slowed to 1,000 speed, the blade was a blur. "Impossible," the adjutant whispered. "No unenhanced being can move that fast." "Apparently they can," Vethran replied. Marcus's second match came 3 days later. His opponent was Yelvani, a blade dancer from Yol Prime. The Yolan were telepathic. They could read the minds of their enemies, seeing attacks before they happened. In 10,000 years of arena competition, no one had ever lost a one-on-one duel. The betting odds were heavily in Yelvani's favor. The bookmakers assumed that Marcus's victory over Gorthik had been luck. Surely he could not defeat an opponent who could read his every thought. Marcus entered the arena floor with his sword already drawn. He held it in a different stance this time, the blade pointing straight forward at eye level. His face was completely blank. Yelvani danced toward him, her fluid body shifting and flowing like water. She carried 2 short blades, one in each hand. Her eyes were closed. She did not need to see. She could feel Marcus's mind, touch his thoughts, know what he would do before he knew himself. Except she could not. The blade dancer stopped moving. Her eyes snapped open. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "Where are your thoughts?" Marcus did not answer. He did not seem to hear her at all. His eyes were open but empty, looking at nothing. His breathing was slow and steady. His body was completely still. "Think something." Yelvani screamed. "How can I fight you if you won't think?" She attacked anyway, rushing forward with both blades spinning. She was fast, faster than any human could possibly react to. But Marcus did not react. He did not think about what to do. His body simply moved, guided by 30 years of practice burned so deep into his muscles that his conscious mind was not needed at all. His sword rose. Yalvani's blade shattered. Against the ancient steel, his sword fell. Blade Dancer collapsed. a thin red line across her chest. She would live, but she would never dance again. Marcus stood over her fallen body. Slowly, awareness returned to his eyes. He looked down at what he had done, and there was no pride in his face. Only sadness. "I am sorry," he said softly. "Your people fight with your minds. My people learn to fight without them." He walked away, leaving the arena floor in silence. In the medical bay, Gorthik watched the match replay on a screen above his bed. His arm had been reattached, but it would take months to heal properly. "What is he?" the Korthan asked the doctor treating him. The doctor, a small Yulin who had felt nothing from Marcus's mind during the match, shook her head. "I do not know. The humans call that mental state no mind. They have practiced it for thousands of years. Why? Because they fought enemies like us long before they reached the stars. Predators who could sense their thoughts. Creatures who could hear their heartbeats. They learned to become invisible inside their own heads." Gorthik turned off the screen. What else did they learn? The doctor did not answer because she did not know. But somewhere deep in her telepathic mind, she felt something she had never felt before. Fear. In the observation gallery, Commander Vethran closed the file he had been reading. It contained everything the Galactic database knew about human combat history. The information went back 10,000 years, and it was terrifying. Every culture on Earth had developed its own ways of fighting. Every generation had improved on the last. For 100 centuries, humans had done nothing but find new and better ways to kill each other. And now one of them was in the arena, carrying a blade that had been perfected over 400 years. "Send a message to the Combat Commission," Vethran ordered. "Tell them we need to discuss the human situation." What should the message say? Vethran watched Marcus walking away from his second victory. The human moved like water flowing around stones, like wind through leaves, like death itself, quiet and patient and absolutely certain. "Tell them," the commander said slowly, "that we may have made a terrible mistake." The common area of the arena dormitory was usually empty at this hour. Most warriors preferred to rest before their matches, saving their strength for the fights to come. But tonight the room was full. Word had spread quickly after Marcus's second victory. The human who had defeated both a Korthan berserker and a Yulon blade dancer was sitting alone in the common room, drinking something from a small cup. Warriors from a dozen species had gathered to watch him. Though none had yet found the courage to approach, Krikstal was the first. The Shivari champion was magnificent, even by the standards of its crystalline species. It stood 8 feet tall, its body made of living crystal that shifted colors as it moved. Krikstal had won the arena games 3 times in the last century. It was considered unbeatable. "Human," it said, its voice like wind chimes in a storm. "May I sit?" Marcus gestured to the chair across from him. "Please." Krikstal lowered itself carefully onto the seat, which creaked under its weight. For a long moment, it simply studied the human with eyes that glowed like distant stars. "Your weapon," it finally said. "I have scanned it from across the room. It has no power source, no enhancement technology. It is simply metal. Carbon steel," Marcus confirmed. He pulled the sword from its sheath and laid it on the table between them. "Forged about 400 years ago on Earth. That is older than my entire civilization." Yes, other warriors had drawn closer, forming a loose circle around the table. Gorthik was there, his reattached arm held in a sling. Several Yulilin watched from the edges of the group, their telepathic senses reaching toward Marcus and finding nothing but calm. "How is this possible?" Krikstal asked. "Your blade is primitive. You have no genetic enhancements. You are smaller and weaker than almost every species in this competition. Yet, you have defeated 2 champions without receiving a single wound." Marcus picked up the sword and turned it slowly. letting the lights of the room dance along the blade. "Let me tell you about Earth," he said. The room fell completely silent. "My world is not a kind place. The gravity is high. The climate is harsh. The native animals are dangerous. When my species first appeared, we were one of the weakest creatures on the planet." He set the sword back on the table. "We had no claws, no fangs, no armor. We could not run as fast as our predators. We could not climb trees to escape them. We could not dig burrows to hide in. By every measure, we should have died out millions of years ago. But you did not," Crickstal observed. "No, we did not." Marcus's eyes grew distant. "Because we learned to make weapons. A rock tied to a stick became a hammer. A sharp stone on a longer stick became a spear. When we learned to work metal, we made swords and arrows and shields." He touched the handle of the katana. "Every generation improved on what came before. Every culture on Earth developed its own fighting styles. The Japanese created the katana and the art of drawing it faster than the eye can see. The Chinese made swords that bent like water and fought like wind. The Europeans built blades that could punch through armor. The Filipinos developed techniques to fight against multiple enemies at once." Gorthik shifted uncomfortably. "You make weapons because you enjoy killing?" "No," Marcus shook his head. "We make weapons because we want to live. Everything in the universe has always tried to kill us. The weather, disease, wild animals, each other. We survived because we refused to accept death." He drew the sword again, holding it up so everyone could see. "This blade represents 1,000 years of refinement. 1,000 years of humans asking one simple question. How do I kill something bigger, faster, and stronger than me?" The sword sang as he sliced it through the air. "We found many answers." A young Korthan pushed forward from the crowd. It was the same one who had seen Marcus on the transport ship. "But that is just metal. Our weapons use gravity manipulation, energy fields, molecular disruption. How can simple steel compete?" Marcus smiled. It was not the smile of a professor explaining a lesson. It was the smile of a predator who had been asked why it hunted. "Come here," he said. "Stand in front of me." The young Korthan hesitated, then stepped forward. Marcus rose from his seat and positioned the alien properly, then returned to his own place. "Your people rely on technology," Marcus said. "When you fight, you think about power levels and energy consumption and optimal angles of attack. Your weapons are complex. They require time to activate. They have range limitations and cooldown periods." He lifted the katana. "My weapon has one moving part. The blade leaves the sheath. The blade returns to the sheath. There is nothing to malfunction, nothing to run out of power, nothing to jam or break or fail." In one fluid motion, he drew the sword and stopped with the edge a hair's breadth from the young Korthan's throat. The alien had not even seen him move. "More importantly," Marcus continued, sliding the blade back into its sheath, "I have practiced this single movement every day for 30 years. I have drawn this sword more than 10 million times. When I fight, I do not think. I do not plan. I do not calculate. I simply act." He sat back down. "Your weapons are better than mine in every way that can be measured. But combat cannot be measured. Combat is chaos. And in chaos, the simplest solution usually wins." Crickstal's crystalline form flickered with colors that the translators could not interpret. "You have given us much to think about, human. There is one more thing." Marcus placed his hand flat on the table. "I am not special. I am not a great warrior. I am a scholar, a teacher, an old man who studies history and practices forms that most humans have forgotten. There are millions on Earth who are faster than me, stronger than me, more skilled than me." He met Crickstal's glowing eyes. I am what happens when humans remember how to fight. You should be grateful you will never meet what happens when we never forget. The room was silent for a long time after that dot later that night. Commander Vethran called an emergency meeting of the Combat Commission. Representatives from 30 species gathered in the secure chamber, their faces displaying various forms of concern. "We have reviewed the humans' matches," Vethran began, "and we have researched his species' combat history. Our findings are alarming." He activated a holographic display. Images appeared showing human weapons from throughout history. Stone axes, bronze swords, steel katanas, rifles, tanks, nuclear missiles. In less than 10,000 years, humans went from throwing rocks to splitting atoms. Their entire history is a record of warfare. They have never known peace for more than a few generations. A Ulilan representative spoke up. "They are a violent species, then. Dangerous and unstable." "No." Vethran shook his head. "That is what I believed at first. But I was wrong. Humans are not violent by nature. They are violent by necessity. Their world forced them to fight or die. They chose to fight." He changed the display to show Marcus's 2 victories, played side by side. "This human is a historian, an academic. He has never served in his species' military. He has never fought in a real battle before this competition. Yet he has defeated 2 of our finest champions without effort. What are you suggesting?" Commander Vethran deactivated the display. "I am suggesting that we may have underestimated humanity for the last 1,000 years. I am suggesting that we should be very, very careful about what happens next." The commission members looked at each other nervously. None of them had any idea what to do. But in his quarters, Marcus Chen was sleeping peacefully, dreaming of his grandfather teaching him the first stance of the sword. The announcement came on the morning of the championship round. Every screen in the arena complex displayed the same message. Broadcast to billions of viewers across the galaxy. Marcus Chen stood in his small room and read the words 3 times to make sure he understood them correctly. "Trial of Steel," he murmured. I wondered when they would use that. The Trial of Steel was an ancient arena rule, older than most of the species competing. It could only be invoked by unanimous vote of the Combat Commission. It meant that the final match would not be a simple one-on-one fight. Instead, the challenger would face multiple opponents at the same time. In this case, 3. Marcus would fight the champions of the Korthan Dominion, the Yule Concordat, and the Shivari Collective, simultaneously. No surrender allowed. No quarter given. The door to his room opened. Earth's ambassador, a tall woman named Sarah Wong, stormed in with fury on her face. "This is murder," she said. "They're trying to kill you. I'm filing a formal protest with the Galactic Council." Marcus continued packing his small bag. "They're within their rights. The Trial of Steel exists for exactly this situation. A competitor who seems too dominant. You call defeating 2 opponents being too dominant? I call it making them afraid." He smiled slightly. "Afraid enough to bend rules that haven't been used in 500 years. Ambassador Wong sat down heavily on the bed. "Marcus, please. Just withdraw. There's no shame in it. You've already proven that humans can compete. You don't need to die to make a point. I'm not going to die. You're facing 3 champions at once. The Korthan is named Varric the Unbroken. He's never lost a match. The Ulalan is Shayanari, the greatest blade dancer of her generation. And Crystal." She shook her head. "You talk to Crystal. You know what it can do. It can regenerate from almost any wound." Marcus finished packing and turned to face her. "Ambassador, do you know why I volunteered for this? Because you're insane?" He laughed. It was a genuine laugh, warm and full of life. "Perhaps, but that's not the reason." He walked to the window and looked out at the arena floating in space. Ships surrounded it like fireflies around a lamp. For 300 years, humans have stayed home. We told ourselves we weren't interested in galactic affairs. We said we had better things to do than compete in bloody games for alien entertainment. His voice grew soft. But the truth is, we were afraid. Afraid that if we fought and lost, the galaxy would see us as weak. And weakness in this universe is an invitation to be conquered. He turned back to face her. I'm here to show them that we're not weak. I'm here to show them that even a single human, with nothing but an old sword and 30 years of practice, can stand against the best warriors in the galaxy. And if you lose, then I'll die trying. He picked up the wooden chest containing his sword. My ancestors did the same. At Thermopylae, at the Alamo, at countless last stands throughout history. They knew they couldn't win, but they fought anyway. Because sometimes the fight matters more than the victory. Ambassador Wong stood and embraced him. You're a stubborn old fool. That's what my wife always says. He returned the embrace, then stepped back. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a match to prepare for. The preparation chamber was quiet. Marcus sat cross-legged on the floor, his sword laid across his knees. He had 3 hours before the match. 3 hours to prepare his mind for what was to come. He closed his eyes and let his thoughts drift away. He remembered his grandfather, teaching him the first stance when he was only 5 years old. Hold it like this, the old man had said. Feel the weight. Let it become part of you. He remembered his father, showing him how to care for the blade. This sword has protected our family for 400 years. Treat it with respect, and it will never fail you. He remembered his wife, watching him practice in their garden on their anniversary. You look like a dancer, she had said. A very serious dancer. He remembered his son, asking why he still practiced every day even though he was an old man. Because the sword remembers, he had told the boy. Even when I forget, the sword remembers. Now the sword lay across his knees, and Marcus could feel its weight like he had felt it 10 million times before. He was not afraid. Fear was a thought, and he had no thoughts. There was only the blade, the breath, and the beating of his heart. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he could hear his ancestors whispering. They spoke in Japanese and Chinese and Korean and Greek and Latin and a dozen other languages. They were warriors and scholars and farmers and kings. They had fought with swords and spears and bare hands. They had won and lost, lived and died, but they had never stopped fighting. We are watching, they seemed to say. Show them what it means to be human. Marcus opened his eyes. It was time. The arena was packed beyond capacity. Ships that could not find docking space floated outside, their crews watching on screens. The Combat Commission had opened free broadcasts to every world in the galaxy. More beings were watching this match than had watched any event in recorded history. The floor of the arena was empty. White stone stretched 200 meters in every direction. There were no obstacles, no terrain advantages, no place to hide or run. 3 entrances opened at the far end of the floor. The champions emerged together. Vorak the Unbroken came first, massive even by Korthan standards. He carried 2 gravity axes, one in each hand. His exoskeleton had been reinforced with additional plating, turning him into a walking tank. Shenari followed, her fluid Yulan form shifting constantly. She held a new weapon, a staff with blades at both ends that crackled with psychic energy. Unlike Yelvani, she kept her eyes open and fixed on Marcus with cold intelligence. Krikstil came last. The Shivari champion had reconfigured its crystalline body into something sharper, more angular. Light refracted through its form in ways that made it hard to look at directly. The 3 champions spread out, forming a triangle with Marcus at the center. They moved with practiced coordination. each one covering the other's blind spots. Commander Vethran's voice echoed through the arena. This is the trial of steel. The match will continue until one side can no longer fight. There is no surrender. There is no escape. May honor guide your blades. Marcus drew his sword. The steel sang as it left the sheath, and for just a moment, the entire universe seemed to hold its breath. My ancestors are watching, Marcus said softly. Let's give them something to be proud of. The horn sounded. The three champions charged, and Marcus stepped forward to meet them, his ancient blade gleaming in the arena lights. 400 years of history rising to face the future. In the stands, Ambassador Wong covered her eyes. She could not bear to watch, but in homes across Earth, millions of humans leaned toward their screens, their hearts pounding, their hands clenched. As one of their own stepped into the impossible, they remembered what Marcus had said: sometimes the fight matters more than the victory. And this was going to be one hell of a fight. The battle lasted 7 minutes. Later, historians would slow down the footage and analyze every frame. They would write papers and books and entire academic courses about what happened on that arena floor. They would debate techniques and strategies and moments of decision for centuries to come. But in those 7 minutes, there was only chaos and steel and the impossible grace of a single human fighting for his life. Varric attacked first, both axes swinging in deadly arcs that could have cut a spaceship in half. Marcus did not try to block. He flowed around the blows like water around stones, letting the massive weapons pass within inches of his body. The Korthan was strong, stronger than anything Marcus had ever faced. But strength meant nothing if you could not hit your target. Shanari came from the side, her psychic blades reaching for Marcus's unprotected back. She was smarter than Yalvani. She did not try to read his thoughts. Instead, she watched his body, predicting where he would move based on physical cues. But Marcus had trained for this too. His grandfather had called it dead movement. The body shifts its weight one way while actually moving another. Every step is a lie. Every gesture is a trap. Shanari's blade stabbed at where Marcus should have been, and met only empty air. Ghost's fang answered with a strike that took one of the Uranus arms off at the elbow. Shanari screamed and fell back. But Marcus could not press the advantage. Crixto was there, its crystalline body reforming into a dozen sharp points, each one stabbing at him from a different direction. Marcus twisted and spun, his sword deflecting what it could, his body dodging what it could not. A crystal spike grazed his ribs, drawing a thin line of blood. Another caught his shoulder, leaving a shallow gash that immediately began to burn. The Shivari's body was toxic to humans. Even a small wound could kill if left untreated. Marcus did not have time to think about that. He kept moving, kept fighting, kept refusing to die. Varric came again, bellowing in rage. The Korthan had abandoned his axes and was fighting with his bare hands now, each fist capable of punching through starship armor. He grabbed at Marcus, trying to catch him, to crush him, to end this embarrassment once and for all. Marcus ducked under the grasping hands and cut deep into the Korthan's leg. Not a killing blow, a disabling one. The massive warrior crashed to the ground, his leg unable to support his weight. "Stay down," Marcus said. "Never," Varric growled. But he could not stand. His leg would not obey him. 6 minutes left. Shanari was back, her remaining arm holding her staff in a one-handed grip. Blood streamed from her wound, but Ulilan could fight through pain that would leave other species unconscious. Her eyes burned with hatred. "You will die here, human." "Perhaps?" Marcus raised his sword. But not yet. They fought. It was a duel within a duel, blade against blade, speed against speed. Marcus was older, slower, weaker. But he had been trained by masters, who had been trained by masters, who had been trained by masters. an unbroken chain of knowledge stretching back 1,000 years. His sword moved in patterns that Shaynaari had never seen. Techniques from a dozen different Earth cultures, blended together into something that had no name, because it was all of them and none of them. He fought like a samurai, like a knight, like a gladiator, like every warrior who had ever lived and died with a blade in hand. The Yulan could not keep up. Ghost Fang found her heart, and she fell without a sound. 5 minutes left. Now it was just Marcus and Crickstill. The Shivari had been watching, learning, adapting. Its crystalline body had reconfigured itself a dozen times during the fight, each form designed to counter what it had seen Marcus do. "You are impressive," Crickstill chimed. "For a primitive." Marcus was breathing hard. The wound in his shoulder burned like fire. His arms ached from blocking Vorak's mighty blows. He could feel his strength fading with every heartbeat. "Thank you," he said, "but you cannot kill me. My body regenerates. Even if you cut me apart, I will reform. This battle has only one ending." Marcus looked at the Shivari champion. He saw the confidence in its glowing eyes, the certainty that it could not be defeated. He had seen that certainty before, in the eyes of every enemy his ancestors had ever faced. "You're right," Marcus admitted. "I probably can't kill you." He shifted his grip on the sword, moving into a stance that no one in the arena had ever seen. It was old, very old. A technique developed on Earth for fighting enemies that could not be killed by normal means. But that's not the only way to win. He attacked. The next 2 minutes were a blur of steel and crystal. Marcus did not try to destroy Crickstill's body. Instead, he cut it. Again and again and again. Precise strikes that severed the connections between the Shivari's crystalline segments. Not destroying them, but rearranging them. Crickstill tried to regenerate, but it could not keep up. Every time it reformed one part, Marcus cut another. Every time it tried to attack, Marcus was already somewhere else, his blade singing its ancient song. The arena was silent. Billions of beings watched as the human danced around the Shivari, his sword moving so fast it seemed to leave trails of light in the air. 1 minute left. Marcus stepped back. His body was covered in cuts from Crickstill's crystal spikes. The poison was spreading through his system. He could feel his vision starting to blur, but he could also see what he had done. Crickstill stood motionless in the center of the arena floor. Its body was intact, but completely wrong. The crystalline segments had been rearranged so that none of them connected properly. The Shivari could not move, could not attack, could not even speak. It would take months of careful reconstruction to restore Crickstill to normal function. Marcus lowered his sword. "Yield." The word came from the arena speakers, translated from the tiny vibrations that were all Crickstill could still produce. "I yield." The horn sounded. For a long moment, there was complete silence. Then, from somewhere in the stands, a single Gorthon began to pound its chest. The sound echoed through the arena like a drumbeat. Others joined. Yulan flickered their telepathic appreciation. Shivari chimed in harmonic acknowledgement. Soon the entire arena was roaring, cheering, celebrating. Not for the victory of one species over another, for the victory of courage over fear, of skill over technology, of one small human against the impossible. Marcus stood alone in the center of the arena floor. His sword dripped with the fluids of 3 different species. His body was covered in wounds. His strength was almost gone, but he was still standing. He bowed, first to his fallen opponents, honoring their courage, then to the crowd, thanking them for witnessing, and finally to the sword itself, the blade that had protected his family for 400 years. "Thank you, old friend," he whispered. Then he collapsed. Medical teams rushed onto the floor. They worked frantically to treat his wounds, to purge the Shivari poison from his blood. to save the human who had just changed the galaxy forever. In the observation gallery, Commander Vethran watched the humans carry their champion away. His 4 compound eyes were filled with an emotion he did not have a name for. "Update our records," he ordered quietly. "Human combat classification is to be revised immediately." "To what level?" Vethran thought about what he had just witnessed. A historian, a scholar, an old man with an old sword, defeating 3 of the finest warriors in the galaxy. "Apex priority," he said. "Do not engage in close combat under any circumstances." "That seems extreme." "No," Vethran shook his head. "That seems appropriate." This human was not their best. He was not even a soldier. He was simply someone who remembered how to fight. He watched the medical teams disappear through the arena entrance. "I do not ever want to discover what happens when they send someone who never forgot." Marcus Chun woke up 3 days later in a hospital on Earth. His wife was holding his hand. His son was asleep in a chair by the window. His daughter had brought flowers that filled the room with color. On the table beside his bed lay the sword, cleaned and polished, waiting for him. "You're an idiot," his wife said, tears streaming down her face. "I know." He squeezed her hand. "But I'm your idiot." Outside the window, ships from 100 worlds floated in orbit around Earth. Ambassadors and warriors and scholars had come to see the planet that produced humans, to study the world that had created a species capable of such impossible feats. They would find a planet full of ordinary people living ordinary lives. Teachers and farmers and artists and dreamers. Nothing special at all, but they would also find a history written in blood and steel. A story of a species that had been prey and made themselves into predators. That had been weak and made themselves strong. That had been afraid and learned to fight anyway. In the archives of the Galactic Combat Commission, a new entry was logged. It would be studied and debated and referenced for centuries to come. Species: human, homeworld, Earth, Sol system. Combat classification: Apex priority. Special note from Commander Vethran. They brought a museum piece to our most advanced arena and won. Their warrior was not a soldier. He was a scholar. This is not their best. This is what happens when they send someone who merely remembers how to fight. I do not wish to discover what happens when they send someone who has never forgotten. Additional note: when asked why humans are so dangerous, the champion Marcus Chen provided the following answer: "Because for 100,000 years, everything in the universe tried to kill us, and we refused to die." End of record.